Hello, everyone. I'm Helen McGrath, LLG's Executive Director of Policy and Governance, and I'm joined this week by Dennis Hall, our Bulletin Editor. Hi, Dennis.
Hi, Helen.
Now, both considered on day 1 and 2 of the spring conference, the sector is waking up with speed to the issue of artificial intelligence. What do you know, Dennis?
Well, that's an interesting question, Helen, because before the last few years, I always thought of artificial intelligence in terms of Star Trek and outer space. But today, in June 2024, as you know, artificial intelligence is something that's on our desks now and not from outer space. So our topic today is artificial intelligence in a particular form that's coming forward now from developers and companies involved in legal tech. It's this generative artificial intelligence. Now, this is important for our sector because I think there is an expectation, there's a demand from those we advise for us to keep up to date and to innovate. But at the same time, we're expected to understand what the implications will be. But are there things that are holding us back from implementing generative AI and other forms of AI, budget considerations apart, I mean, because of course they're important as well. Well, a Law Society article has highlighted the latest survey research about AI and the law, and in particular that form of artificial intelligence that involves generative AI. Now, a key finding is that whether lawyers trust the use of AI appears to depend primarily upon whether they perceive that there is a safe regulatory environment governing its use. Lawyers in the UK are wary of the government stepping in to regulate the profession's use of artificial intelligence, but interestingly, not as wary as their transatlantic colleagues, and this is what international research has revealed. Now, AI regulation will be on the desk of the new government, whatever happens in the general election, so it is timely for us to take a deep dive into all of this. And as you know, Helen, we've looked at this. There was a spring conference session, very interesting. Yep. Members were gripped by it. They were shown examples, and I think you'll come on to this later. So it's very timely indeed. And also, when we look at these external surveys, we do learn a great deal by looking at trends and developments in the corporate legal market and what is happening in in-house environments elsewhere. So what I'm talking about is it's this latest Thomson Reuters report. It enables us to see what the future might look like, especially on the use of these latest forms of IE technology. So let's look at what the report tells us, Helen.
Yes. So, well, according to a study by legal information giant Thomson Reuters, and they are, let's face it, 48% of lawyers in UK firms and 50% of in-house lawyers believe that the legal profession should self-regulate its use of AI. Now, that's really interesting to me because that's obviously half the sector that feels quite confident in a very unknown space and slightly alien, I would suspect, to lawyers potentially more than other certain types of industries. So only 36% of lawyers in UK firms and 44% of UK in-house lawyers say that the government should regulate their use of the use of AI. And of course, we've seen moves to regulate AI in the European Parliament in a quite different way. So, I mean, enthusiasm for government regulation is notably higher than in North America. Only 26% of lawyers surveyed in the US and in Canada think that the government should regulate AI. So that's even less, so quarter. And Kriti Sharma, who's the chief product officer for legal tech at Thomson Reuters, said that regulation plays a critical role in instilling the trust needed to achieve widespread adoption of AI solutions. But that said, it's exciting to also see firms taking clear steps to self-regulate, such as investing in AI skills training, which I think is very much needed, and setting robust guidelines so they can start harnessing its benefits now, whilst also ensuring its safe use. But Dennis, I think the government did introduce a bill on this, did they not?
Well, indeed, they did. It was a measure entitled the Artificial Intelligence Regulation Bill. It was one of the casualties of the dissolution of Parliament for the general election, something we discussed in detail a few weeks ago. However, the Bar Conference heard last weekend that whatever the result of the general election, a parliamentary measure can be expected in the next King's Speech. Now, generative AI is still at a developmental stage, and as we mentioned later, its development is surrounded by a number of concerns over accuracy, security, and ethical considerations. And there's much talk about this issue of regulation that you've mentioned. But the conundrum for us is this, isn't it? Those we advise will be looking to lawyers not only to encourage innovation, but also to protect privacy and ensure ethical use. Now, in-house lawyers are more likely to see a greater role for the government alongside the profession than do lawyers within law firms, and that's according to the survey. 40% of UK respondents favour government regulation. That's interesting, isn't it, Helen?
Yeah, it is. And if we go back to that report from Thomson Reuters, it shows that the top three barriers preventing lawyers from making more use of generative AI in their work are the potential for inaccurate responses. That was nearly 75% of lawyers saw that as a concern. And I know just from testing what's available at the moment that I've had sort of arguments, if you like, with artificial intelligence, and it's changed its mind profusely as I'm advising it why I don't agree with its position, sort of thing. So also, and I think this is a really big one actually, although less so for the percentage of lawyers, but 68% have real concerns about data security. And I think that has got to be a massive concern, especially when we're talking about legal privilege and other elements like that. But also complying with relevant laws and regulations. 63% of lawyers were concerned about that. And I think part of that issue is around really trying to get to terms with how AI might interplay with all this myriad of legislation we've got on the statute book. And I think there's going to be unforeseen consequences in that regard. But the Thomson Reuters 2024 report, and it's on the state of the UK legal market, also found that of the lawyers who say their firms and departments are using generative AI, the most common uses of the technology are document review, legal research, and document summarization. And Dennis, the report did have a lot to say about current legal market conditions in the UK.
Indeed, it did. And if any of our members like new buzzwords, get your pen and paper out now, because there's a couple here that I hadn't come across, so eyes down. Because the report makes a number of connections between market conditions and the use and relevance of artificial intelligence platforms. And, as I said earlier, it's useful to contrast and compare the trends that affect our counterparts who act as general counsel in large corporate organizations. And according to the report, one key priority for general counsel is described as, wait for it, commerciality, by which is meant the importance for legal advisors to demonstrate that they understand the business of their client corporate organizations. And also another phrase that comes up in the survey, in the report, is known by the acronym ESG. Had you come across that one, Helen? I had.
No.
ESG, you'll understand it straight away when I mention what it is. It stands for economic, social, and governance issues. Okay. This will impress your friends to know all these new things, but ESG is one of the two big things that come out in the report. And in other words, these are front and center, the priorities that general counsel deal with. And don't they sound familiar with the things that we deal with here in our sector, in local government, particularly at monitoring officer level? Now, back to regulatory issues. These figure prominently on the agenda of general counsel, and the primary role that they have as legal advisors is in terms of risk mitigation. Now, we always knew this, and this too is considered as part of that sense of the buzzword commerciality. So impress your friends. There's three words there that will really impress. But in a nutshell, I'm being serious, Helen, the best lawyers, whether in private business or in local government, are those who can demonstrate that they understand their clients. Yeah, that's always been true, whatever words it comes under today as compared with the past. And we know this, don't we? Lawyers who demonstrate this are valued by their local authorities. This much we know to be true. But there is this new expectation, and I think this should concern us because it's in front of us now. Budget considerations apart, lawyers will have to engage with the new and emerging legal technology of the kind that is transforming legal services at the present time, Helen. And I know this was demonstrated at the conference. You might want to comment on that.
Yeah, it was. And I think I mean, I'm not wholly convinced the sector, certainly the in-house sector, has been at the forefront of technological advancement, I think, and that's to do with funding and all sorts of things.
Mm.
But, we're going to have to be, and indeed we did see examples being demonstrated at the Leeds Spring Conference last week. And Ben Wickerson and Fiona Anthony of Norfolk County Council demonstrated their Microsoft Copilot, which is a form of generative artificial intelligence that's been developed within a local authority context. So, and Des Brady of Thomson Reuters also took us through a demonstration of the latest Westlaw assisted research platform, which will be of particular interest to lawyers in local government. And the effectiveness of this was for everybody to see. It's sped up basically the skills you need to be able to research relevant information in whatever area you're looking for. But interestingly, it already is trying to embed a protective cushion around ensuring that false information that's available elsewhere doesn't permeate those results. Because, of course, back when we first started talking about AI, we did see, didn't we, a couple of lawyers in America relying on a generative AI case law that purely exists. So, and Des did also refer to the challenges that exist to actually adopting generative AI. So,
yeah, well, yes, indeed. I mean, they've been very frank about this, and the report reflects the concerns that many lawyers have, and indeed will be reflected in our own membership. And the report, as you've said, provides interesting statistics, and particularly around those barriers that lawyers perceive in relation to the adoption, in particular, of generative AI, which seems to be very information intensive. It relies very much on a lot of input of information going into the platform. But the key statistics are there, aren't they? 74% of respondents were concerned with the possibility of inaccurate responses, 68% were concerned about data security, and 63% had concerns about complying with relevant laws and regulations. Now, these are big issues, and these are big percentage numbers, aren't they, about the main barriers that people are concerned about. And also, Helen, high on the list were concerns about privacy and confidentiality of information, particularly when using generative AI tools. And of course, the other main concern, of course, that we have mentioned before is whether generative AI can be used ethically and responsibly, not just within legal teams, but when it's being used corporately, particularly in the financial sectors of local authorities. I'm confident that once the new government, whichever government it is, sets out a pragmatic regulatory and ethical framework for the use of these advanced platforms, this will itself generate far greater confidence and interest in their use. I feel we're not there quite yet.
No, we're not, but I'm really embracing your positivism, if I can get that word out. And we should be confident, and let's just hope for the best. We've got no choice. It's coming. It's here. So great chat as ever, Dennis.
Thank you.
Don't forget to viewers, you can get more coverage by reading the LLG bulletin and, of course, by listening to the Grapevine podcast, which is also available on Spotify. So it's goodbye from me.
And from me too. Bye now.